important that we have an opportunity to hear directly from our district engineer as to how this will affect our area and be able to answer your questions. So I welcome everybody here today. I will say this, that one of the significant things are we got a DA report here, and I'm happy to see that. One of the important things about this road bond is that it's figured into the state budget. It's calculated in the state budget. So keep that in mind. If we don't get this road bond passed, I can say this. I'm not a government employee. I'm going to say it right up front because I know Donnie has to leave. Chamber of Commerce is strongly in favor of this. We're desperately needing roads. We got 431 million of needs right now. Bill will correct me if I'm wrong, but that approximate number, this program will only bring about half of that into our actual needs that we really need to address. As I said, the economic development growth and potential is astronomical with this program if we do it and we do it right. And I'm telling you, I've had the great opportunity to spend time with Tom Smith and Donnie Williams and their entire staff, and we truly have a professional staff. You got to keep in mind, this staff has only been together since February, I believe, February or March. So I'll tell you, we can make a difference in this state, and we can move out of the doldrums of the past. So I gave you the pitch as to why the Chamber of Commerce believes we have to do it. We have to do it now. Now the technical reasons, I turn it over to Donnie Williams, our district engineer.
Thank you, Alvin. Appreciate that. I'd like to start a sign-in sheet around, if you don't mind. That way, if I say something wrong, I can contact you and correct it.
Anybody not have a copy of this?
Steve Latino, we're going to kick all this. It's like when I first started in engineering, I had to give my first deposition. And if you give a deposition very often, you realize you have great answers about 2 hours after the deposition. And I never forget, so I gave my very first deposition. It was over a right-of-way issue in one of our projects, and I didn't know much about that stuff. You know, I'm just the engineer. And they sent me the deposition, you know, my comments. I marked it all up and changed all my answers and sent it back to them. They said, Mr. Williams, that isn't what we asked for. And so we'll try to get this more correct as we're here tonight. But it is a great honor to be here. How many seen the presentation? Just curious. Would somebody else like to give it tonight? I don't know for sure. It's been a whirlwind. I think this is my 16th time over the last 2 weeks. And I think I've got 11 more to go between now. I actually got a presentation in Taylor County on October 6th at 7 o'clock. Okay, so it's been interesting. But we try to make it interesting. Every time I give it, I learn more about myself, and we learn together on this. I appreciate the kind words Alvin had. And we'll just start into this and go through it. Some of it's probably very redundant. But think of good questions, and we'll try to answer them the best of our ability as it applies. As he said, I am a state employee. I can't tell you how to vote. I just encourage you to vote. I think it's a great honor in this country to vote. I saw in the paper this morning about 1,000 folks roughly have early voted. I think it starts September 22nd, and it starts the main vote till on October the 7th. The only reason I remember that's my daughter's birthday, so I can keep that straight. It's called the Roads to Prosperity, and if we go to the next one, please. If you remember when Governor Justice, his first state of the state, he gave a presentation, and that's where we first saw the signs. If you remember that he marched down, there was 2 groups of people, and they had these large signs with them with multiple projects listed on them, if you remember this. And he started talking about roads to prosperity. And that's kind of the first time we heard about it. You know, it was kind of a vision. He has his interpretation of how he came to this conclusion, but it's something he's very passionate about. And one thing I'll strongly agree with, that good transportation is a key to success in terms of financial, about where businesses choose. I think in your own hometown here, could you ever dream that the interchange at exit 153 would have developed so much. I mean, I'm thinking of the Cabela's exit up near Wheeling. Remember when Cabela's went in? Well, I was excited. I'm a hunter, so I couldn't wait to go to Cabela's, right? Go up there now. Every place is developed out. So good roads bring businesses to locality, and in existing roads, it's just good for our citizenry. So we work hard on that. Next. Now the legislation, and I won't bore you with all the legislation. Many of you have heard it before. What I've done, the first two are just tools in the toolbox. It's processes of which we can use legislatively to help us with design processes. The first one, the private-public partnerships, we haven't done that very much. You know, it's where like a private entity would come in and maybe build it and then charge us back. You've seen this in the world around us, like with turnpikes. Big bridges, they'll come in and they'll finance it. Big business, way beyond me. I've never been involved in one. PPPs, they're called sometimes. Long those. The next one's design build. Again, I look at these as tools in the toolbox. Design build is the way they built the interchange at exit 153. Okay? So what a design build is, they go out and they do a project. And the way it works is the contractor forms a union with a consultant or a designer, and they work on the project together and bid it as such. Now, my experience has been in research, I was a research coordinator for a long time and read a lot of articles, that design build doesn't necessarily save you a lot of money, but it does save you a lot of time, okay? So it's almost like building a house, and you say, well, we're gonna build a garage over here. Well, all right, build it, and we'll work on this section over here tomorrow, okay? So it allows a lot of interjection, a lot of work going on at the same time, and it progresses much quicker. The interchange, like I said, at 153, was one of the first, one of the few design build projects we had in the state. The next was Garvey Bonds. Now, one thing I've tried to delineate between the bonds, and there's some confusion out there, there's multiple sets of bonds being juggled around, but each of these bonds generate or has the potential of generating a pool of money that the governor has access to. The first one is Garvey Bonds. Now I need to clearly say up front that Garvey Bonds is not what you're voting on October 7th. Those are general obligation bonds, okay? The Garvey Bonds is essentially, we receive federal money every year into the Division of Highways. Federal government, FHWA, trickles this money down based on road mileage, comes off your federal gas tax. You know, you've seen these big programs, $260 to $280 billion over 6 years. I think it's on Trump's agenda down the road. They've talked about that that's one of his big things, looking at the new infrastructure bill for, you know, roads and bridges and such. We get a proportion of that, and it's around a little over $400 million a year. We have to match that 80-20 state funds to federal funds to build projects. And those monies can only be used on federal routes, okay? So what they've done, and what this Garvey mechanism is, it allows you to take money from your future federal commitments every year and put that toward the bonds. So the way it works is, in the Garvey bonds, they took X amount of money, I think it was less than 30 million or something like that. They said, we're going to commit 30 million or whatever that number was of the next so many years and buy bonds with it. Legislation was passed, everything's in place, so we can do up to $500 million in Garvey bond. Again, it's borrowing against our future federal monies to buy a bond today, okay? Now, a couple weeks ago, and this is important to understand, and this is how the bonds work in general, they went out and they put together a list of projects, had them designed, put them out to contract. Major projects, okay? And they put this under the Garvey bond, okay? And the way it works is they actually take those projects. If you look at your list, you had two projects on the Garvey bond here in Montague County. The first one, on the upper one, first one is the I-79 Blue Horizon Drive, Pennsylvania state line. So that was a project where they were actually going to rehab from the Pennsylvania line back, a major rehab project. Okay, and the next one, the bridge, is Arnottsville Bridge, was a bridge replacement, estimated about $1.6 million. So what they did, they actually had those plans ready. They go out, they bid them, they get the actual bid costs, they bundle them together into one big thing once they get those final prices. and they went out and they're buying the Garvey bond. The other day, when they let this letting, around $240 million in new projects were let. 240 million. Largest letting in the history of the Division of Highways. One letting, multiple projects all over the state. And the Garvey bond pays that. So one thing's important, that's how it works. You get your projects designed, you put them in a bundle, you let the projects as one, in one big letting, you know that amount, then you go out and you obtain your Garvey bond, okay? Or your bonds in general, because we'll talk about the same principle being applied to the general operation bonds, okay? Very similar principle. So what that means now is they've spent 240 million on this round of Garvey 1, they call it. They had about 50 million on another project they already committed to. They have a $500 million ability or envelope to borrow against. So they've got about 250 million left on the Garvey bonds. Only federal monies, you're not voting on them, already approved, but like Montague County, it's one of the largest paving projects I've ever seen. And what I like about these projects, we're not going out there and just paving. This is a major rehab, tearing that concrete up. I don't know the exact projects, but something caught me off guard the other day because I'm not too involved in these, but they said 9 of these projects on the Garvey bonds were interstate projects that had 9-year warranties on them. We never hear warranties. We're starting to get into the warranty. So when that contractor builds it, not only does he or she build it, but they warranty the maintenance of it, keeping it to a certain level for up to 9 years. Very progressive thinking in our world, and really good things. Next one is parkways. Parkways, if you remember the political debate about taking the tolls off the turnpikes in the legislative session. And I didn't follow it too close, I gotta be honest, because living here in Montague County, you know, the only time I used the parkways or the turnpike is going to Myrtle Beach, like most good West Virginians do once a year. But what happened was, as part of that negotiations, what they did was they took that, they left the revenues on it, there were some caveats in that to the locals, but the money that is generated from the revenues off of that, they're going to take that revenue off the turnpike, they're buying a bond with that, okay? Again, getting a big bunch of money up front. And the way it's being applied, that money can only be used for the 10 counties that are adjacent to the turnpike. So I think the philosophy was, this is where the locals are. They're the ones that has to pay the fee anyway, so they get the reaping back into their communities and their local counties. And that lastly takes us to the last thing, was the fees. Okay, these are the fees. 3 elements to it. This is what we're talking about, and this is the way the whole thing progresses. There was the DMV fees, and I always start off with the question, have you paid your vehicle registration recently? Have you done that? Yes. Well, they went up, right? You remember, about 20 bucks. My wife, we were in that transition, and I have a GMC pickup, and she sent it in for 30 something. They sent it back to her, and she said, "What's this?" I said, "That's what's going to pay for the bond." $20. And she never got the joke at all. I can't even get her to come to these. I invited her tonight. I said, "Why don't you come out tonight? You're not doing anything." No, I got something else to do. So anyways, that's the first part of it. The first part of those 30 was the DMV fees went up for your registration, roughly $20-ish. The gas tax went up about 3.5 cents, I think. That's the second part of it. And the third part was what they call the privilege tax, okay? It's the sales tax that you pay on your vehicle when you buy it. I remember when this was taking place, and again, not as plugged in because I didn't have this job when this was taking place. You know, you saw a lot of the car dealerships that come buy your car before July 1st, so you can get it cheaper so you don't have to pay the extra 1% in the sales tax. But those are the 3 things. Now this is what's important, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, but this is what's important. Garvey bonds, nothing to do with October 7th. Already been approved, we're already spending that money. You're already seeing the money being spent. It's already in Montague County. Contracts have been let. Work's already about ready to begin. Parkways doesn't apply to us. We're not one of the 10 counties or so that's adjacent to the turnpike. The fees, the money generated from those 3 elements, that's the foundation of the revenue that we'll buy our general obligation bonds with. and I'm very redundant on this on purpose. It consists of your privilege tax, your sales tax, your DMV fees, your registration fee, and your increase in gas tax. Next, please. So 2 and 3, I'm not going to talk about too much other than the tolls. They're saying that can generate about $500 million in bond. The Garvey bond, we mentioned that. It was up to $500 million. That was done legislatively. I'm sure the delegates in the room could tell us more about that, how that works. But that was increased, that limit, so we can do that. But the first thing is what I'm going to talk about, because this directly relates to what you're about to do if you're voting on October 7th. The increase of those three things, all right, those three elements, they've estimated, and based on their analysis, and they have a lot of historical data, estimated it will generate about $130 million a year, okay? $130 million a year. Their experts and the people they've consulted with have said, well, if you have that, and I'm not a bond expert, this lady worked for an investment company, could probably blow me away on that. You know, I can talk about bridges, bonds I'm not very good at. But the way I was told it worked, and I'm just being bluntly honest about this process, was that they went out and they looked at these bonds, and there's companies that sell bonds. And we hired experts who deal with that intermediary. And they said essentially with the bond rate, what it is, which is apparently very low right now, like 3.4%, something like that. And with our payment ability of $130 million, they said that that would generate enough funding to generate a bond up to about $1.6 billion, okay, along those lines. So I often think of it, it's like, and I tell the illustration, if you go buy a new car and you walk onto the car lot, and the question I always say is the salesman comes out and he says, what are you looking for? I'm looking for a new car. And he or she will say, well, how much can you afford? And that's what they're after. What's your payment? You know, what can you afford? And then it'll pick you a car proportionally to what your payment is. So in our case, we walked onto the car lot and we said, how much can you afford? It's $130 million from those three factors. How much car can we buy, or how much bond can we buy? $1.6 billion, okay, of automobile. Now, it's important we talk about this, and this is something I've learned more about as we progressed with this. They're not going to go out and simply say, okay, I've got the $130 million, I'm going to go out and buy $1.6 billion in bonds, put it in our checking account, and figure out what to do with it. First of all, the ability to purchase bonds is a constitutional act, okay? It's constitutional. That's why you have to have the vote. Again, I'm not a constitutional lawyer or background on that, but it's my understanding that when you're using money generated from state funds, that has to be constitutionally, it's required to have a vote on that to be able to use that to purchase a bond. I say, Eldon, I know he's a lawyer, he can help me with that. But, and that's why we're going to the vote. It's a simple majority vote. You know, it's not 2/3, it's a simple, I guess one vote would make the difference, one way or the other. But like we talked about the Garvey bonds, this bond's going to work similar in this. They're going to take the bond program, the $1.6 billion, and break it into 4 years. Now the reason is, every project you see on this list is not designed yet, okay? We don't have bridges designed sitting on the shelf, okay? And the reason is, and it's really good economics, is we don't spend millions of dollars to design plans on bridges and roads that we don't have the funding source for. Our world specifications change yearly. New codes come out. So what we design today may not be applicable in 5 years. We'd have to go back and completely rebuild that. So we have a philosophy. We don't design projects, put them on the shelf, let them sit there and hope someday with some fairy dust, the money comes in and we build those, okay? So these projects aren't designed. But some projects are easier designed than others. Projects that don't have right-of-way. The interstate projects are a great example. We own the right-of-way. So if we go out there and add an extra lane to the right-of-way, or to the interstate, for the most part, we own it. There's not utilities in the way. There's not environmental clearances, usually. All the things that can slow down the process will go in the first phase. So the way it's going to work, year one, they're going to put out, just like the Garvey bond, a list of projects that have been designed. You're probably going to see what I call the low-hanging fruit, interstate projects. As a matter of fact, we have a list of those. You're going to see things like paving projects. One thing that amazes me, and as a resident here in Montague County, Morgantown, if you look toward the bottom of your list, okay, you have three things listed. Number 4 from the bottom and down. It says NHS payment, slide repair. Let's see what that number is. 500,000. NHS payment, reconstruction and rehabilitation, 9.3 million. In non-NHS pavement reconstruction at 2.1 million. NHS means it's a national highway system. That's a federal route, okay? The Route 7s, like I've talked to many people about, to the western end of the county. Also like US 19, 119, 50, these are all US routes. Non-NHS routes are your county routes, okay? County Route 15, these are county routes. But what that's telling me is, Montague County, if this bond passes, will receive almost $11.5 million in brand new pavement, right off the bat. We're going to take that, and my staff and Mr. Pumphrey, who I didn't introduce, and this is Mike Pumphrey. I'm sure that was the highlight of your day.
Mine too.
Yeah, we've been doing this so long. It's funny. When I first took this job, one of my goals was I went out to visit our county guys, and they're hard workers, and there's a lot of them. And the guy I was going with, he first introduced me with this big, long introduction. He was nervous, and by the 8th time he said, "Okay, here's Don." What happened to my introduction? Same with Mike. But Mike works in our design section and oversees the roadway design stuff. So what will happen is, probably what they'll do, they'll say, "Okay, here's $11.5 million. That's low-hanging fruit. Paving's easy for us. Rehab's easy for us. We're not buying rights away. We're not having to move utility lines and poles, and we're not worried about fiber optics, and we're not worried about sensitive issues like that. It's contained within our right-of-way. So we're going to take a lot of that money, and we're going to go out, and that's the kind of project you're going to see in phase 1 of the bonds, part of that $800 million year 1. And the bonds roughly broken down like $800 million the first year, $600 million the second year, $200 million the third year, and about $200 million the fourth year, something like that. So we're going to do the same thing. So they're going to bundle these projects together for the whole state, like the Garvey Bond was. Put those together, let those, get actual cost on them. Those prices will then be bundled together. So let's say we estimate $800 million. It may come in at $712 million. Then they'll take that money and then go buy their bond. Okay, with that money. So when people say, "Well, how long are the bonds? How long do you buy these for?" What I'm being told is they can't tell you until they get ready to buy the bond. What I am told is they have X amount of money. So what they'll do, instead of going like 25 years, they're going to shorten it as much as they can. They'd rather, if you got the same payment, pay it quicker, and then say, "Well, let's pay less and keep it at 25, just like a car payment." And I think what they've been advised that's a very prudent thing to do. So that's the way that will work. Now, one of the questions that comes up is how the projects have been selected. And this is something, as Eldon mentioned, Tom Smith. Tom came from the Federal Highway Administration. Worked in this state for over 20 years as a division director, I believe. And that's where many of us got to know Tom. Tom's not a politician. He's an engineer. He's a very forward-thinking kind of guy. He's really entertaining and energetic, and he just really makes you think big. He's always looking ahead. He's that kind of guy, and that's why a lot of us like working for him. It's not status quo. Let's turn this into something special, and that's what he wants to do with our highway system. He wants us. He understands, and we understand this, the opportunity to do such. But they had lists already established, and that's what's important to understand. The projects that you see listed here, okay, whether or not they've already been paid for, the things in the orange, for example, and the green, that came from monies already generated, okay? We're already receiving that money from those three things. Well, they're not sitting on that money. You know what they did? They farmed it out already, and we're paving with it. Okay, they're not sitting on it. We're out there actually putting it out into the field as we speak. Projects have already been let. These other projects, a lot of them came off of lists that were already established. They're already on lists to be done. Okay, the funding source wasn't there. So when you look at these bridge projects, you look at some of these larger projects, they've already been established and vetted and thought through in a very precise manner that's very transparent. And that's what I've enjoyed about this process. So the first was the STIP. A lot of the projects came off what's called the statewide transportation improvement plan. It's a federal document. We're required to keep looking at long terms ahead. Okay, it always has a little flexibility in it, but it's kind of like, what are you going to use your money for the next 20 years? The next thing is the National Bridge Inspection Data. And I like to emphasize with that the beauty of that is every bridge in our state that we maintain, which we maintain most of the bridges in West Virginia, have what's called a structural deficiency number. That number is kind of a collective collage of all the elements associated with that bridge, and they have a rating number. The lower the number, the worse the bridge. So I can tell you right now in Montague County what your worst bridges are structural by looking at that number, okay? So that's where a lot of the bridges came from. Okay, these are your worst bridges, and we've been, looking at those really close. And then pavement management, we look at this very closely, all the pavement money. Like for example, we were talking and we may take, and I'm not promising this, but we may take some of that money and fix 705. How many people drive 705? Is there any problems on 705? Yeah, the concrete repairs are fixed.
This big or this big?
I like them littler.
Well, there's some this.
Yeah. Concrete pavement is very difficult for us to fix, okay, to really fix them correctly. I was a construction engineer for 12 years. One of the greatest things I ever had as a job, I oversaw the construction. When I was there, we did some great projects. The Monfate Expressway, Star City Bridge, was all projects I was associated with. But when you get to concrete work, we're just not equipped for it. It takes big saws, it takes a lot of traffic control, it takes special concretes. Well, there's an example. We may take some of that money and let a contract to fix all those joints, all right? Fix them properly. We hear the complaints and we understand that. We go out there and we fix them. If you got 30-some thousand cars a day, they don't last long. We're out there. It's in our benefit, and that's the beauty of this program. If we fix, for example, and again, I'm not committing to 705, we'll have an inclusive plan. But if we fix 705 or we fix a pothole to a higher degree and we fix roads better, my crew's not out there working on it, right? They're not having to go out on 705 at night. We have a night crew that works on 705 in places now. They can go elsewhere and work because those roads are now brought up to a higher level. That alleviates and allows our folks to go out there and work on other projects. So every time we pave and repair a road that's already bad, that gives us some buffer to go work on other projects. And that's some of the beauty of all this paving. And now one thing, Mr. Austin's here, and maybe you won't give me just a 5-minute break and explain how we took his Tier 1 projects in the MPO long-range plan, and why tell it when the guy who wrote it sitting here? And he'll tell you how like the top 5 projects are on his bond, which I took liberty there. He told me I could do that. I think.
Well, I'm always happy to give you a break, Connie, and it's always a pleasure presenting with you. I'm a little surprised though. The MPO process is actually mandated, a federally mandated process where MPOs develop long-range transportation plans for urban areas with populations of 50,000 or more. There are 8 MPOs in West Virginia. Morgantown is one of the newer MPOs. It was founded in 2003. What MPOs do, as I said, is we develop the urban areas long-range transportation plan, and we work with a board made up of elected officials from all of the urban areas, municipalities, Montague County, the Board of Education, and we do a lot of public involvement to determine what the public perceives as the needs out in the community, as well as we do computer modeling to try and understand how projects can improve traffic operations in an area. We go through an extensive process with public meetings and public input to put together a long-range transportation plan. Mike, is there a slide with the,
No, there's a handout.
there's a handout? Okay,
It's in right there in front of
yeah, there's, in your handout,
the second sheet.
you will see in the second sheet, what we do, once we've identified the projects that we believe the urban area needs, we do a public involvement process with our Citizens Advisory Committee and our Technical Advisory Committee and our Policy Board and the public in general to identify what the highest priorities are within the urban area. It's a very open and transparent process. Several of my Policy Board members are here tonight, and as is our Citizens Advisory Committee Chairman. And we have 5 projects that are located in our Tier 1 projects, and those projects are the highest priority projects for our area. Our Policy Board determined we are required to develop what's called a fiscally constrained priority list, meaning that we think that they're fundable projects, and 5 of those high priority projects are on the list. One is the I-79 access study, a new bridge over the Monongahela River. Another is Van Voorhees Road improvements, which Van Voorhees Road, those of you who live in Morgantown are very familiar with it, that it is a narrow road. There's need for a sidewalk along there. There are a lot of students. You can see the running along the side of the road. Beechurst Avenue improvements. Beechurst Avenue is one of the primary corridors in downtown, and it experiences congestion every day. And the project is not currently designed to be widening throughout the entire length of Beechurst Avenue, but to find those small improvements to Beechurst Avenue and the intersections along Beechurst Avenue that could make traffic operate better along Beechurst Avenue. We're in the planning process, which we will turn over to the Division of Highways, of determining the types of improvements that are needed along Beechurst Avenue in a very specific manner. That planning process will also include the development of more in-depth improvements, which if it's determined by the community that's what they want, then we can seek to get DOH to put in. So it's a very comprehensive look, but it would, even the smaller improvements or a larger plan, if that's what comes out of it, would certainly help Beechurst Avenue operate better, both for vehicles and for the pedestrians and cyclists that use that corridor. And that corridor is also a very heavily pedestrian-traveled corridor. West Run improvements, and the entire length of West Run Road is included in the program for widening, primarily to a 3-lane cross-section. That's what we've understood, and with some accommodations for cyclists, because it's a heavily residential area, and a wide outside shoulder would certainly help cyclists as well as trucks and people in automobiles get along that corridor better. And finally, improvements to Greenbag Road. Greenbag Road is a road that handles commuters. It experiences frequent congestion with the change of shifts of employers in the area. It includes the Dorsey Avenue intersection, and we're also working with state on improving the Downtown Boulevard intersection. That is an important project also because there's a heavy freight usage along the corridor. And we've worked with the trucking community to determine that if we made improvements that make Greenbag Road an easier road to travel, it would help get some of the truck traffic out of downtown Morgantown, which has been a major issue within the community. It would not solve all of the truck issues in downtown Morgantown, but it would help relieve some of the pressure on the downtown city streets. So all of these projects are important projects to the community. And we really appreciate the Division of Highways working with us to get these projects implemented, and I think the Congress can certainly facilitate that. Thank you.
I know I have a short notice, but excellent job. And what I like about this, these are already projects that were kind of vintage, the way I look at it. Before Bill came, I served on the MPO from the conception of it almost, with Chad Parsons, and worked on both things, and it's been a wonderful, and I'll give a little plug. You know, it's funny, as an engineer, we're pretty dry people, and they put me first on the technical and the citizen, on the citizen committee. What's this going to be? Man, I learned so much. I know, Bill. It was usually a good experience other than one. But no, I can remember there was a doctor on the citizen committee was talking about community health. And I thought, that's pretty neat. You know, and it kind of softened the engineer in me more to the other issues that's associated in place, the diversity of Morgantown, West, you know, cap and gown town. I'd like to show something, and I was thinking about this, and I think what I'd like for you to do is turn to this drawing or photograph of Van Voorhees. I probably don't pronounce it right. I know I spell it 5 different ways. Okay? Well, what I'd like to show you is how this whole thing is evolving to help our community. So, for example, if you look at number 1, anybody live on Van Voorhees? Not that way, or use it on a regular basis? Well, Bill does, Bill Austin, and Mr. Rich. You go out that way a lot, probably, off of 705. There's a section being built right now. It's a major construction project by All Construction that was already in the works, okay? So that project's under construction. It's behind schedule right now, but I had an interesting phone call today about how that contractor's working really well with the locals to make sure we get all that drainage time. That project is as much about drainage as it is about road. You know, it's a lot of drainage. So then they come to us and they say, well, Donnie, we got this extra money coming in, you know, off these fees and gas taxes. They gave us some extra money. What could you do with it? And I said, well, we looked at this and we had plans already. So we went and we're going to pave number 2, that part of Van Voorhees. Okay, wasn't planned, extra money. And number 3, part 3 on the other end. Now here comes the bond project behind, all right, and it's 2 projects. Number 6 is a project that's been put on the bond list, major project to tie all that together. Then project 5, okay, the West Road, or the West Run, widening that. So you can see kind of, this is a microcosm of what this whole bond can do, the extra money's doing. So here's Van Voorhees. If we didn't have the extra money, and if we don't get the bond, if it's not voted up, we're going to do section 1. That's it. Those other sections are on lists, but they would only get done based on funding as it comes down the road. It's interesting, and I forgot to make this point a minute ago. Montague County is getting around $11.5 million in additional payment. That's my total budget for 6 counties in 1 year. You're getting my whole district budget at one time. And this is the beauty. So these other projects that Bill mentioned, that's already on list, we're looking for funding sources to find funding. They get moved up to the bond and get done. So what happens to those holes behind? We're going to fill those with new projects under our regular programs. Doesn't go as quick. But now you're getting a double whammy. You're going to get $11 million in paving. Boom. And then behind that, we're going to hit you with new programs like we've done every year normally. What a boost in our whole system. But it just dawned on me with Bill's video, I needed some mind time for myself. But this really shows what this bond can do and the additional money. It showed Van Voorhees going from one little project, I think it's 0.59 miles long. Big project, a lot of money because a lot of utility. That maybe over the next 2 years, all that's going to be completed because of the bond and the additional money. Think about that. This may have taken 20 years under the normal process. And that can be done in a few years. That's the beauty of what we're talking about. And like Bill said, like one thing catches my eye, we just did the Easton Hill. Have you driven through the new Easton Hill project? Do you like it?
Yeah.
I think, I live there. So when people were griping, I was going Canyon Road too every night, because I just live on Stewartstown Road on the other side. I just think it's a tremendous, that project, and it's the first of many of that hill, to me it's just a tremendous invitation to our community. It's a gateway. Somebody asked me today and said, W, you ought to put a nice sign down there that says, welcome to Western University in Morgantown, you know, in that big area. And I'm like, well, in this, you've got $41 million of Bill's project that was listed in the bond that's moved up to finish the top of Easton Hill, right, to the Honda shop and the light, and then the widening out to the roundabout. Now that whole system works better. You know why? I'm a fan of the roundabout. I think it works well. It'll work a lot better when we get those 2 lanes going to 2 lanes. We got 2 lanes going to 1 lane. That was the intent though. When that section's done, now you've got the unity of the whole system. Well, that bond allows you to put that up there, get the financing. We still have to clear right away. We still have to do that. But now that funding source. So when we were looking for money for $41 million, we can look for that $41 million, use it somewhere else now. That's the beauty of this. It's a double thing. Mike? That's a little twist I had tonight. Now, just real quick, and we talk about roads in West Virginia. We have the 6th longest highway system in the United States. I think what happened, I remember studying this one time, probably after the Depression, or shortly after the Depression, there were some bills taken that we took in the whole highway system of West Virginia. You know, if you're in Pennsylvania, you have what, municipalities, you have city streets. You know, the city of Morgantown does have some streets and maybe some bridges, but majority, 36,000 miles belong to us. 6th longest road system. Think about that. Places like California, Texas, I can't remember them all, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and then Florida and us. Think about that. And the problem is, how do we generate a revenue? Gas tax. So we don't have a lot of people. We get no money from the general fund. Okay? I've said this a lot. I thought, I wish I had $1 for every time somebody's called me and said, I pay a lot of property taxes and I want my road fixed. Well, I'd love to get your property taxes, but it doesn't go to the Division of Highways. You know, it goes to pay for schools and those type of things. So let's move on now. Real quickly, 55 counties, projects in every county. Montague County, in particular, I think is the largest. Over $274 million, $273 million in projects. $100 million is the I-79 connector project in the north. But even if you threw that out, you still have over almost $175 million in new bridges, new roads. And when I say new roads, we're not building new roads, we're rehabbing what we have for the most part. You know, the western bypass would be a new road system. But the beauty of this is, and what I like is, it's just not paving an inch over. What I like is my design section is going to design these the way we'd love to design projects. We're going to fix them, we're going to dig out bad places, we're going to replace stuff. You know, we're already going to get as much mileage, but we're going to get good quality. And we're capable of doing that. And if we have the funding sources, we can do that. In all 55 counties, my district in particular is the most money of any because we have Marion County, big interstate project in Marion, Mon County, Harrison County has a large project along those lines. Next, please. They talk about waves, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but waves simply means, and we've already addressed this, as projects get available to go out to funding on those. So a wave like year 1 of the bond, right? Getting those projects, getting them out to buy the bond, that's year 1, that's wave 1. So we'll move on. And that's what this here shows us. We talked about a 30 million surge, 100 million, that's 130 million. The first part of the $100 million, they've already given us that money to the biggest extent. At least half of that we're putting into paving projects this fall. That's some of the projects you've seen on this. And then we've reserved part of that in case the bond didn't pass. They've kind of kept that money there, but in the bond passes, we've got a whole wave of other paving projects ready to go out for next May. All right, when the spring paving season starts. So again, a gigantic boost on top of the bonds. You see the Garvey Bonds, we've already talked about that. That money's already been put out. Turnpike doesn't apply to us, and then they use $700 million. The slide's a little incorrect, it's $800 now. But you see year 1, $800 million, all those projects. Low-hanging fruit, a project like the Western Bypass, some of the bridges, you'll see those coming in probably years 3 and 4. We got to go in and design them, get the environmental. See, this gentleman had Thrasher. That's what they do for a living, right? That kind of stuff. But what hurts us on those projects, usually not the design. It's the creek crossing. It's the fiber optic cable that costs $8 million to move. You know, that kind of stuff. Next, please. All right, then the slide I love. Oh, yeah, what happened to it?
not there yet.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Waiting for it.
We'll go for it. There it is. Well, I like this one. Now, one thing, people ask me, well, honey, are they gonna fix my road with this? Maybe, maybe not. Lower your road, if you live on a road with 20 ADT, where there's not money gonna be allocated, says we're gonna pave your Harp roads and things like that. What it's gonna do is allow us to get out on those roads using our other money sources, because we're getting our main routes. We always try to do projects based on priority means. You know, so if you have 36,000 vehicles a day going across 705, that's a high priority to us. Same with snow removal, same type of system. Okay? But what I like to talk about on this slide is, and I really mean this, you got to think about your destination. Hey, I live in a neighborhood too that has a big pothole, and, you know, and I get onto them. I say, but it's low priority. Okay? But you know what? There's a lot of times I drive every day to Clarksburg. I get off at the exit 121 at Clarksburg every day. I'm driving a lot of this intersection, this interstate section, that's kind of scary at times because there's so much more capacity. And I use the Interstate 79 exit 99 as an example. Has anybody used the Weston exit? Can anybody tell me about that exit, what you love or hate? I have no idea what that was, but I'm sure it was.
That means I can't figure out where the next car is coming from.
Yes, okay. I hope you got that on camera. Okay. But, you know, when you're getting off, when you're getting on to exit I-79 South, what do? There's a lane. When you're getting off exit 99, you're in that same lane. You ever seen that? The Pennsylvania Turnpike used to be all like that. And I used to work down there, and one of my assistants lives down there. There's been times I'd have to go to the next exit, you know, or tractor trailer's getting on here, and you're trying to get off, and you're trying to maneuver that, that's going to be replaced. All these projects in our district, the US 50 I-79 exit 119, okay, the one down there on 33, that's going to be replaced. It was a split diamond interchange. Real modern interchange, okay, helps capacity, reduces backups. Have you gotten off the exit, for example, at South Fairmont? That's not an easy exit, especially getting back on going southbound. What happened? You come there and there's that bridge right there. Well, they're wanting to widen all that to 6 lanes all the way through there, like a 3-mile section. So that's why I'm saying, yeah, my county route, it's going to be influenced by this. A lot of us go to different places. I tell the story, I was up in Preston County, which is a much rural location, and I was talking, giving this presentation, and one of the county commissioners came over to me, a very nice gentleman. He lived near Newburgh, West Virginia. You know where Newburgh is? Yeah. Little town. I actually did a bridge structure over there when I was in construction. Newburgh's not a big place, a little loop around the community, and had a little store there and stuff. And he said, you know, Donnie, he said, this is important to us in Preston County. And I said, okay. I said, well, tell me why. And he said, well, guess where most of our people work in Newburgh? I said, Morgantown. He said, no, they work at the FBI. So they go out, hit Route 50, go down, hit that interchange I'm talking about, 5079, go up the interstate to the FBI exit. Our world is so big or so small, however you want to look at that. We go a long ways now to work. So those are important things to understand. Next, please. Oh, here it comes. I think they had a point to make. A lot of jobs. We could talk about that all day. Largest building project maybe in our history, next to maybe the interstate project. Everybody's smart in this room. You know that means jobs. I worked in construction for a long time. You know, did major projects. I always tell the example. You know, when we were doing the high-level bridge in Fairmont, the big concrete arch bridge, that was one of our projects. And it was an out-of-state contractor, had it, very good contractor, but all the workers came out of local union halls. I mean, the craft workers, iron workers, and they had some of their people too. And this thing, I'm sure, I'm not an expert on this, it's going to balance out. There's going to be a lot of work for a lot of people. But the last thing is, note on this, is no new taxes. When you vote October 7th, the fees to pay for the general obligation bonds, right, is already there. If you vote yes, you vote no, I mean, that's your business, that's your prerogative. You're going to pay that fee where it comes or goes. There's nothing new. If you pass that on October 7th, or if it's passed on October 7th, there's no secret agenda that says, no, we're going to increase the gas tax. It's simply taken the generated 130 million estimated, that's already being generated, you've been paying it since July the 1st. You've already seen the results of it. Like I said, we paid parts of Van Voorst using some of that money. It will go to pay for this bond and bring millions of dollars of projects to Montague County, over 270 million worth. Little slide that shows the extension of how much the green is, the general obligation bond, how big that is as a piece of the pie of all the funding sources we have. Next, please.
Something you might want to point out. I listen to a lot of talk radio. There's a lot of confusion on the dollar amounts that's out there that's in the public. The green is the general obligation bond. That's your 1.6 billion. That's what the bond that you're voting on brings. That whole pie, the turnpike bonds, the Garvey bonds, and the initial $30 million surge, that whole pie equals 2.6 billion in the whole program. Because I'm hearing a lot of people saying, well, I hear it's 2.6, I hear it's 1.6, so it's 2.6 total with this program that the governor has. But you're voting on the 1.6 billion.
Right, the green. Yeah, good point. And like Mike said, the Garvey bond was about $500 million, the turnpike's $500 million, roughly 500 million, and this is 1.6.
Then they had to go and make it even more confusing. I noticed that when the governor spoke, there was a news slide up there that said 3.3 billion.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had to ask them afterwards, I'm like, how's it 3.3 billion? Well, we have 3.3 billion's worth of projects ready. Out of those, we'll do 2.6. They just have some in case some get held up in right away or whatever. So it's.
Now, I can tell you as a guy who loved mathematics my whole life, who has multiple degrees, all I can tell you is that's a big bunch of money.
You
That's what
didn't
it
give us the net of it. We need the net of it. 2.9.
We're going to net the next slide. So what happens if it doesn't pass? Go ahead. The cost of building stuff today, and Mike hits this, they've done this research. We keep a lot of, the federal government requires us to keep a lot of statistics. Our construction costs over the last 13 years have went up 65%. Let's think about that. So that $100 million project, that $10 million bridge, if you wait 13 years, it's going to cost 1.65 times at least. And looking at our inflationary numbers and the way things go, that could even be worse. So it's kind of a very simple complex. We're borrowing money at 3.5%. If you look at this rate, 65% over 13 years, you know, I'm sure most investors would like to get that kind of money right now on some bonds. They're saying we can buy it cheaper now than let the inflation keep going. Again, there's much more qualified people to talk about that. Next, please. The waves are there, but the money will be gone. You still have about $250 million, $250 million left in the Garvey bonds that could be used. You're still going to have the $130 million, right? That money's still going to be generated, but that's going to be divided amongst 10 districts, and also all those projects, like I said, they were already on the list, are going to get moved up. They're going to go back. So some of that money may go to some of those projects, but it's only going to be a small percentage of the actual projects.
And you won't see as much for the small local or the secondary roads.
Right. It's going to be probably your bigger projects. They're going to be built, that may take 20 years, for example. Okay. Next, please. Safety, especially in southern West Virginia. Some of these routes they've been wanting to work on for a long time. Next, please. Bridges. Now, my passion structures. I was a structural engineer for a long time at the state. I like structures. It's in my blood. What you see is what's out there. A lot of our bridges. Believe it or not. Our infrastructure is just simply falling apart. Doesn't mean it's unsafe, but it's rated low. So a beam like that, and I haven't quite even figured out what that thing is. It may be a floor beam, or it could be a diaphragm to haunt. But anyways, I digress in my little mind. That beam has capacity, but that's where you're getting these 3-ton bridges. They were built at 25 tons. Now they're at 3 tons. So when you replace these bridges, we're getting rid of that for 50 years. Okay? We're getting rid of bad structures, you know. We're letting school buses go, emergency vehicles, and fire trucks. You know, it's a big influence even on insurance rates. We used to have to do analysis because the fire trucks can get across, you know, emergencies. And again, you replace 7 or 8 bridges in Montague County, our forces continue to work on other bridges, replace other bridges. You know, it's a beautiful thing.
Hey, Don,
Yes, sir.
how long does it take for a bridge to get in that condition?
Well, you know, it depends. I make the point, I believe, that things accelerate quicker once they deteriorate. So it's pretty constant, then you lose the paint on it, it starts rusting, and it goes much quicker. Something like that, a lot of it's salt, you know, and deterioration. That could have been 25 to 30 years, something along those lines. Rust isn't a good example. Rust expands, I forget what it is, 10 times its width. So a 16th inch of rust looks like an inch and a half of rust. But once it starts bad. And that's what our inspectors do. I was thinking about this today, talking to my bridge engineer. Structures like this takes our forces a lot of time just to inspect it. We have to do hands-on. We measure that, believe it or not. We got fancy little gadgets, and we have to analyze them and take them apart. A new structure is so much easier, even on the time savings of our crews working as maintenance forces. How does it work? I'll let what Eldon said speak for itself about Tom Smith. You can make your own judgment on me, you know, but I think I am very proud to work for this organization. I make no apology for that. From the top down, we have a lot of good people. And we live here. You know, we're not coming in selling you a bill of goods and going home. The stuff I'm talking about, I'm going to be driving across tonight. My daughter's a sophomore at WU in music, and she drives these roads. I tell the story, you know, I never call my daughter about did she get through my neighborhood. But when she drives to Parkersburg, I make sure she gets through the intersection. Dad worries about the interstate far more. That's the way we are. We live here, right? This is our community. And when I look at something like this, I honestly believe that when I step back sometimes, you got to step back. You can look at this individually, or you can look at it inclusively, our community. And I really believe this is a good thing for our community as a whole, and our county as Montague County. Website, top of the thing, you go to our website, click a button, all the projects are listed in all 55 counties. And lastly, if you got a complaint, I'll give you Mike's number. If you thought it was a good presentation, you can call us. This is Don Williams, I'm Donnie Williams, of course, and that's my address. I work in Clarksburg. We're off the Meadowbrook Road, so I do that every morning, and that's where my office is. So this isn't my road. This is our community. This is our county. This is our district. This is where we live. And I think you have to look at it from 10,000 feet and say, am I tired of, the other night when I left the meeting, on, what night was it? Tuesday night, I had to go to the city council downtown. Not that far, off of Bruce Street. It took me, I walked in with 32 seconds. I walked in, sat down, and he said, well, Mr. Williams, you know, traffic was so backed up in that whole area. I just hit it at the wrong time. It took me almost 30 minutes to get from one to the other. Is that a quality of life issue? Everybody's got different. To me, yeah, it is. It's about me getting home easier. It's about not panicking. It's about going shopping and getting home. Not worrying about what time I have to leave work. I worked out Chestnut Ridge Research Building. When I left at 3:30, that was my normal time. I could get home in 10 minutes and stop the top of Stewartstown Road. If I left at 4:30, it became a 45-minute trip to go 3 miles. So is it worth looking at that whole inclusive process and saying, is that better for us? I'm a big quality of life guy. You know, if we can move traffic out and make life better, less potholes, fix things, my quality of life's easier when we're not out here fighting this stuff. So, anybody else have a question? Melissa, I really appreciate the opportunity. Bill, thank you for helping me, and Mike.
Hey, Donnie, maybe just a comment, not
Yes, sir,
please. I mean, great presentation, it's really, really good. You know, my only comment would be, you know, this to me is a complete no-brainer. You know, I don't know if people that have opposition to it, I mean, maybe I could be explained into some level of opposition, but I certainly don't understand it. This makes all the sense in the world. So if you feel that way, what I would suggest everyone in the room do, absolutely go vote. But take your friends, take your family, take your neighbors, grab a carpool and take 10 people with you to go vote. The turnout's not going to be super high, so this is going to come down to, you know, hundreds of votes. And so we need every single vote out there if we want these things to happen. And I'm certainly in the camp that does. So again, I know Donnie can't go on the record to say he's fully supportive, but I can and I will, and happy to do that in front of any audience.
Let's thank Donnie and Mike for their work.